It started the day I moved into apartment 304. I was broke, recently laid off, and desperate for a place to stay. When the building manager told me the rent was nearly half the going rate, I should have known better. But when you're scraping coins for dinner, red flags start to look a lot like lifelines. The building was old, not charming old, not vintage old, just tired. The kind of place where the elevator lurches like it's sighing, and the paint on the walls peels in lazy strips like it gave up trying to hold on. The hallway outside my unit was long and narrow, lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb at one end that always buzzed like it was whispering something too fast to catch. Room 304 was at the very end of that hallway. I didn't notice her the first night. The second night, I couldn't sleep. The air was too still, like the apartment hadn't breathed in years. I sat up, groggy, and wandered to the kitchen for water. That's when I saw her, a figure at the end of the hallway, by the elevator. A woman, pale dress, long, limp black hair. She wasn't moving, not swaying, not shifting, just standing. I froze. The hallway light flickered again, casting shadows that warped and bent. I blinked. She was gone. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe someone had been waiting for the elevator. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or sleep-deprived paranoia. But that night, she was there again, standing, always at the very end, always in the same spot. I started closing my door at night, double-locking it, but somehow, I always felt her presence, like she was waiting for something. Watching it wasn't long before I started hearing noises, soft knocking, slow, deliberate, not at my door, but along the walls, as though someone were rapping their knuckles gently across the entire building, one room at a time. Then, the whispering started. It wasn't clear words, just the faint hiss of a voice barely brushing against the edge of understanding. I pressed my ear to the wall once, and the whispering stopped immediately, like it knew I was listening. A neighbor, the only one I'd ever seen, lived in 302, an old man with yellow eyes and fingers stained from cigarettes. "You've seen her," he said, before I even asked. "Who?" I tried to keep my voice level. "The woman," he muttered. "She doesn't like it when you stare too long. She's always been here, always standing there at the end." I asked him if he'd seen her move. He shook his head. "No, but she gets closer." That night, I tested it. I stood at the edge of my doorway, looked straight down the hallway. She was there again. Pale dress, long hair like wet threads hanging from her skull. I didn't blink. My eyes stung and watered, but I kept them wide. She didn't move. Then a breeze brushed past my shoulder. I turned around. The window was closed. When I looked back, she was closer. There was no room 306. The hallway ended at 304, but I started hearing noises, shuffling, murmuring from behind a door that shouldn't exist. I checked again the next morning. Still nothing, just the wall. But that night there was a door, rusted, numbered 306 in faded brass. I reached for the knob. It was warm. Something whispered from inside. Not a voice. Not quite. It was like a memory crawling out of my ears. I stepped back, and the door blinked out of existence. The woman was back at the end of the hallway. I blinked. She was 3 steps closer. The man from 302 stopped answering. One night, I found his door ajar. His apartment was empty. Furniture gone. Lights off. No sign of a struggle. Just ... silence. Except for one thing, written across his wall in black marker, over and over. "Don't blink. Don't blink. Don't blink." The woman was no longer just standing at the end. She was in the hallway outside my door. Every time I blinked, she got closer. By now, I could see her face, or what was left of it. Skin stretched thin, hollowed cheeks, eyes like pits in a glacier, cold, unfathomable, endless. Her mouth was slightly open, and inside I could see nothing. Just darkness. That was the last night I tried to sleep. I left the apartment at 3 a.m., unable to stand the feeling of being watched for even one more minute. In the basement of the building, so dark that even my phone flashlight felt useless, I found a small storage room. On a dusty wooden shelf sat a box full of old VHS tapes. Most were moldy and unlabeled. Only one had anything written on it, scrawled in shaky black marker. 304, keep eyes open. I borrowed a VCR from the old manager and plugged it into the crusty TV in my living room. The footage showed a familiar space, apartment 34. The camera angle was skewed, like it had been hidden in a corner near the ceiling. In the video, a woman sat trembling in the middle of the room. Every time she turned toward the hallway, she began sobbing uncontrollably. Every time she closed her eyes, something started to appear. First a shadow, then hair, an arm, a foot stepping into frame. I fast-forwarded the tape. When the girl finally closed her eyes for the last time, a grey, shriveled hand slithered round her neck and pulled her out of view. Static. The tape ended. I started digging into the records of past tenants. Had to bribe the old manager with a few beers and a thick envelope before he derummaged through the moldy filing cabinet. Her name was Marla Griggs. Rented apartment 304 in 1998. She vanished without a trace just 3 months after moving in. Police never found a body. The last line in the incident report was handwritten and barely legible. Maybe she never left. I found a copy of Marla's medical file. She suffered from severe anxiety, paranoia, claustrophobia, and, most notably, a deep fear of long hallways. I looked up. She was there again, but she wasn't standing anymore. She was crawling. I bought a stopwatch, started testing things. I would stare at her, without blinking, for 30 seconds. 5 seconds. She stood still. 10 seconds. The hallway light flickered violently. She shifted forward, even though I never saw her move. 20 seconds. My eyes started to burn. I felt blood forming in the corners. 30 seconds. My vision blurred. I blinked. She was right in front of me, less than an arm's length away. I screamed and fell back. When I opened my eyes again, she was gone. Only wet footprints remained, smeared along the floor, starting from the end of the hallway, all the way to my front door. I tried to leave the apartment, but everything, wouldn't let me. I called a cab. It never showed up. I packed my bags. By morning they were back in place, as if untouched. I broke the emergency stairwell door and found myself stepping back into the third-floor hallway, where she was always waiting. One night, I dreamt I was standing in a pitch-black room, exactly like the one from the VHS tape. I could see myself from above, like I was being recorded, and she, Marla, or whatever was left of her, sat directly behind me, whispering the same phrase, over and over. "When you look away from me, I won't look away from you." I jolted awake. On the wall, written in what looked like blood, someone had scrawled, "She's not at the end of the hallway anymore. She's inside your head." I started placing cameras in the apartment, one in the living room, one facing the hallway, and one aimed directly at the front door. I needed proof that I wasn't going insane. I wanted to catch the moment she moved. The first night, nothing happened. I rewound the footage. Silence, stillness, nothing. But on the second night, something had changed. While I was asleep, the living room camera began to glitch. Exactly 3 minutes of static. When the image returned, I wasn't on the couch anymore. Instead, I was standing in the hallway, back to the camera, eyes wide open, arms limp. I had no memory of getting up, no memory at all. And then, I turned toward the lens and smiled. I could no longer tell the difference between dream and reality. One night, after stepping out of the bathroom, I saw a new door at the end of the hallway, right beside the front entrance. It had no handle, no hinges, just a black rectangle with a yellowed paper taped to it. For those who've looked too long. I stepped closer and knocked softly. No response. I turned away and heard the creak of the door opening behind me. Inside was a narrow room, lined with mirrors, cracked, warped, stained with darkness. I looked in. I didn't see myself. I saw her, in every pane of glass, standing where I should have been. Each day, I forgot something basic. My name, my phone number, what my mother looked like, the smell of morning coffee. But I could still remember the sound of her footsteps every time I blinked. I tried leaving the apartment again. I opened the front door. There was no hallway, just a perfect replica of apartment 304, stretching in front of me. I stepped in. I was inside myself. A different version, a different time. On the old TV screen, a tape was playing. I walked closer. The person in the footage was me, sitting in the dark, trembling, crying. And behind me in the video, she began to crawl out of the corner, inch by inch, silent. Then, the me in the footage turned around and stared directly into the camera, as if he knew I was watching. "When you look away from me, I won't look away from you." The tape kept playing. In the footage, I, or whatever version of me that was, began to scream. Not words, just a raw, primal howl that made the camera shake. The screen flickered, warped, then static. It wasn't just on the TV anymore. The walls around me began to buzz, the ceiling, the floor, my thoughts, like the world was being overwritten, erased, frame by frame. In the center of the room, she appeared, but this time, I was watching her through the camera, not with my eyes, but as if my sight had been detached, floating, like a ghost behind the lens. She looked up directly at me, and whispered, "You don't remember, do you?" I woke up, or thought I did, lying on the bare floor of apartment 304. No furniture, no lights, no doors, only a single cabinet, rusted and barely standing, with a drawer half open. Inside were folders, some torn, others damp, all labeled with strange codes. One folder was marked, subject number 17, hallway manifestation attempt, failed. Inside were photos of me, or someone who looked like me, sitting in the apartment, standing in the hallway, sleeping, staring at the camera. A typed note attached read, subject failed to stabilize. Visual hallucination regressed into recursive identity loop. Subject unaware they are not real. Underneath, handwritten in red ink, "This one thinks he's the tenant." I dropped the folder. My hands were trembling. And then I understood. The woman, Marla, or what remained of her, was never trying to hurt me. She was warning me. She was the last one who remembered what it felt like to be real. I wasn't haunted. I was the echo. A copy of a copy. A ghost born from surveillance tapes, decaying memories, failed experiments. There was never a lease, never a neighbor, never a hallway, only the repetition, only the watching, only the endless crawling back into a place that never existed. I stood in front of the mirror. There was no reflection. Behind me in the distance, not far, not close, not anywhere, she whispered one final truth. "You were never in apartment 304. Apartment 304 is in you."